What are ND filters, and in particular, do we need them with our drones? We're gonna find this out together in this video by reviewing this pack of 2 variable ND filters by Freewell for the DJI Mavic Air 2. Hello guys, welcome to a new video. This wonderful landscape is Sardinia, the second biggest island here in Italy, my country. If it's the first time for you to check my channel, my name is Mamware. I'm a content producer based in London. I usually do camera gear reviews and also give travel tips as I travel the world. So stay tuned and consider to subscribe right now. As I mentioned, today we're going to talk about ND filters. So what are ND filters and how they work? ND stands for neutral density. The purpose of these filters is to reduce the amount of light going through the sensor. Usually ND filters are just a piece of dark glass that you put in front of your lens, but variable ND filters are actually made of 2 pieces of glass. One in the background, which is a fixed piece of glass, and one in the foreground, which can spin. And by spinning the wheel, by spinning the glass in the foreground, you can change the direction of the light going through the lens. So you can actually reduce the amount of light going through your sensor. So why and when we use ND filters? As you might know, the 3 foundations of photography and videography are exposure, shutter speed, and ISO. Well, usually in photography we use ND filters to recreate some particular effects like long exposure photography. In videography we actually use the filters to keep a natural motion blur. And in videography it's very common to use a shutter speed which is double your frame rate. For example, if you're using a frame rate at 25 frames per second, your shutter speed should match more or less 1/50th. In certain conditions of light, in particular daylight, you need a filter to keep these settings matching. And for example, right now I'm using a filter in front of my Blackmagic because I'm filming at 24 frames per second and my shutter speed is 1/50th. And to do so, I need a filter to reduce the amount of light going through the sensor because I'm actually shooting at f4. So it's very bright, a lot of light going through the lens. And if I didn't have a filter, my image would be overexposed. To give you a better idea, I'm going to show you some images, one with a filter and one without a filter with the same settings so you can understand the difference. Neutral density filters can be recognized on top of the filter actually by the 2 letters ND, so neutral density, and then you can see a number. Usually the number starts from 2 and then it goes up to 1,000 as well if you really want to do long exposure photography in daylight like this shot. So the higher the number you'll find on the filter, the less light you will have entering your sensor. The DJI Mavic Air 2 drone comes already with a set of filters which are ND 16, 64 and 256, and you can buy a second set which is made of ND 4, 8 and 32. And today we're gonna compare the DJI filters also with the Freewell. So as I mentioned, we're going to unbox right now this set of filters and see what's inside the box. The packaging is quite nice, very simple, tiny box. When you open the box, you can take the case out and you've got actually space for 4 different filters, but the set is made of 2 filters. The first filter covers f-stops from 2 to 5 and it corresponds from ND2 to ND32. The second filter instead covers from f-stop 6 to 9 and it corresponds from ND64 to 512. I've been here in Sardinia for 10 days now. I've been using only 1 filter on top of my Mavic Air 2, which is the filter number 1, which covers from f-stop 2 to f-stop 5, and I'm actually using the filter at f5, so more or less ND32. In the box you'll also find a few accessories, this tiny envelope with the instruction manual, of course, and a wipe to keep your filters nice and clean as we like. Quick interruption, guys, also to mention my Adobe Premiere Pro video editing course that you can find on my website mamoair.com. Go and check it out. It's a course that covers the whole video editing process, from how to create a project to finalize your video and export your videos with captions, color grade and audio mix. So go check it out. It's at a special price of £24.99 instead of £149. So definitely that's the right time to grab it. Some filters are built of plastic, but these filters are actually made with glass. So there are two polarized pieces of glasses, one in front of the other. As we mentioned before, you can spin the wheel and change the direction of the light going through the lens. Apart from the glass, also the quality of the frame of the filter is really good. Some type of metal, so it's not plasticky like many other filters. Once again, in terms of quality of the product, I definitely recommend it. The image as well, it looks great to my eye, but we're gonna take a few shots, videography and photography shots with and without filter, and I want to hear your opinion down here in the comments tab. Also in the description tab, you can find all the items I'm using to film this vlog and the items I'm using for the drone, all the filters, it's all there in the description tab. Bear in mind, guys, I'm also Amazon affiliated, which means whenever you click on my links and you actually purchase one of the products, I'm getting a tiny percentage of the product. Of course, you're not overcharged, you're just paying the normal price, but you will help me to keep building my YouTube channel and keep carrying on with this career as a freelance video maker. So some generic comments are, why do I use variable ND filters instead of normal ND filters? Well, especially for portability. For example, if you want to cover the whole range of filters, you might travel with 6-10 different filters. But with the variable filters, you can actually have only 2 filters that cover the whole range. They're usually very simple to use as well. You just screw them on top of your lens. In the case of the DJI Mavic Air 2, there's already a frame around your lens which you wanna take out, and you can do so by spinning the frame counterclockwise. You're gonna remove the frame and then you can replace it with the filters. Same procedure, you will find some holes in front of your lens, and then I'm just going to match the pins, the 4 pins I have around the filters, into these holes on the actual lens. And now I'm just gonna twist clockwise and the filter is locked. So the question today is, do we actually need ND filters for the drones? Well, that's what we're gonna test together, because usually if we do landscape photography or videography, I'm not sure if you actually need an ND filter on your drone. But if you have a moving subject, that could be the difference. Okay, we're gonna start the test, and before doing that, I want to guide you through the settings I'm using for this particular test with the Mavic Air 2. I'm setting everything in manual, so I'm in charge fully of the controls and the image. And first of all, I'm recording in 4K 30 frames per second. I wanted to put some slow motion, but unfortunately the active track, which we're gonna test as well, is not working with slow motion, so we have to put the lower frame rate at 30 FPS. To have a correct exposure at this point, I have to push the ISO to 400, and the shutter speed, of course, is gonna be 1/60th of a second, so the exposure is correct right now. On top of the Mavic Air, I'm starting with the filter from Freewell, and I'm gonna use it at f-stop 6, which is gonna match the ND64 of the DJI set. I hope it makes sense. So first shot, I'm gonna go full throttle, full speed through these 2 rocks and see if we notice any motion blur. Now we're gonna do the second test. I'm gonna run around and jump like an idiot, but that's what I do, so hey, get used to it. And we're gonna see how the motion blur works in this case. So if you wanna use the active track, this is how your image would look with an ND filter. Once again, I'm using the Freewell ND filter number 2 from f-stop 6 to f-stop 9. So this is ND64. Just changed the filter. I put the original DJI ND 64 on, and we're gonna try in the same shot through those two rocks over there, through the cliffs, see if we notice any difference in terms of tone of the image and motion blur. But the motion blur should be exactly the same because the settings are the same on the drone. So let's fly. I can notice already a bit of a difference in terms of, yes, temperature and color of the image overall. This is a bit more natural. The Freewell looks a bit more greenish, and again, you will notice this on the screen. By the way, I just dropped the drone, so don't take your sensor off the drone, keep them on. This is the last mode, so not filter on, and I need to change some settings here on the drone. Well, basically I need to change the shutter speed to match the lighting settings. So as you can see, it's very exposed. The image is very exposed right now. I'm gonna leave the ISO to 400 just because I want to match the previous settings, and I want to change as less controls as possible. The shutter speed needs to go to 3200 to match the previous setting. So before, the shutter speed was 1/60th, remember, and now is 3200. So definitely a big change right there. So let's gonna take the same shots here. So the change of shutter speed with these settings without filter is definitely noticeable, and it's an option if, for example, you want to use your drone to take your thumbnail for YouTube as well. So it's all up to you, it's a choice. If you want a cinematic film, then you want to use the filter, but if you want something a bit more crispier, and also if you want a video from where you can extract some thumbnails for your videos, well, without filters is better. But in my opinion, filters are the best option anyway for filmmaking in general. If you want to get closer to professional filmmaking, well, then the ND filters are what you need. That's my personal opinion anyway. Now, in terms of videography, the test I've done worked really well with the filters. It worked really well also with still photography, with normal photography. The only problem I faced was actually when I was taking panoramic shots. Usually ND filters create a bit of vignette around your image, and in the case of panoramic shots, you can actually see some stains in your image, so that doesn't really work really well. And I would suggest to take your filters out if you want to take panoramic shots. I also tried the stronger filter, the Freewell stronger filter number 2 at f-stop 9, which covers more or less ND 400, and I tried some long exposure photography in flight, but unfortunately the drone was moving too much, so I'm not sure if long exposure photography will work if you're actually flying your drone, so I don't see the purpose of using that filter. And then I tried a shot with the drone on the ground, so with a steady drone, and that's the result. So if you want to just do long exposure photography on the ground, that could work, but as the drone is flying, I don't think that's an option, especially if there's a bit of wind in the air. Also, in terms of shutter speed and exposure time, I could only use 2 seconds exposure, so I couldn't really do long exposure like 30 seconds. So 2 seconds was the maximum time I could actually set to have a decent image with the filter. So what I'm gonna do right now is to put an ND 1000 of my Blackmagic on top of in front of the lens of the Mavic Air 2 and see if we can delay the exposure time a little bit, and let's see the result right now. The image you're seeing, guys, was filmed with the ND 1000, and the exposure time, so the shutter speed, was 5 seconds. And once again, I don't think in the air you can actually use this setting, so I'm not sure if you need this filter of the set. So if you have to buy the filters, I definitely recommend the first filter from f-stop 2 to f-stop 5, which covers again from ND2 to ND32, and that's what I used so far for a couple of weeks during daylight, full sun in the sky. I didn't need the ND64 above. Guys, all the best things come to an end, and so does this episode right here. I hope it helped you to understand more about ND filters, and in particular if you want or need ND filters on your drone. You know what to do. Hit the subscribe button, the like button. I'll see you in the next video. God bless you.